Part 1. The Unexpected Eavesdrop. I was chewing on some leftover fried rice when I heard my own daughter, Citra, calmly planning to put me in a nursing home and sell the house I built with my own two hands. And it wasn't a conversation I was supposed to hear. It was early this morning, the sunlight was still timidly peeking through the dusty curtain gaps. The semi-wooden house, inherited from my late wife, Rini, felt so silent. The creaking of the wooden floorboards was my faithful companion with every step I took in this old neighborhood in Cicerua, Bogor Regency. Our house has stood here since 1995. Yes, the house that Rini and I built, stone by stone. We used to dream of building a little piece of heaven, didn't we, BU? I muttered softly, staring at our wedding photo hanging on the living room wall. Now, this house is aging with me. The paint is peeling in some corners. The roof leaks a bit during heavy rain, and the old furniture is always kept impeccably clean. Not much has changed since Rini passed away. I still wake up at 5 a.m. for the dawn prayer, then sweep the yard, even though my knees and lower back scream in protest sometimes. I hadn't left the house for a week. My right leg was throbbing from the increasingly severe rheumatism. My daily activity was limited to watching the morning news while sipping plain tea, then sitting still in my favorite rattan chair, facing the window, and looking at the rambutan tree that Citra and I had planted when she was a little girl. Citra, my only child. She used to hug me tight and say, "Dad is the greatest person in the world." But that was before she married Jeffrey. Since then, our communication has become sparse. At most, once a week via WhatsApp, sometimes a voice call that was mostly just small talk. I often felt a distance between us but chose not to bring it up. She had her own life now. "Don't sell Dad's house. It holds Mom's memories. We'll take care of it together later," Citra had said a few months ago. Those words had warmed me, making me feel needed again. That evening, just before sunset, my phone rang. A video call from Citra. With a shaky finger, I slid the green button on the screen. Citra's face appeared with a Surabaya hotel room as the background. She looked neat, while Jeffrey looked tired but still greeted me politely from behind her. "Assalamualaikum, Dad," Citra greeted with a sweet smile. "Walaikum salam, Naduk, my girl," I replied, adjusting my glasses. "Have you eaten, Dad?" she asked gently. "Yeah, I made a little fried rice earlier. Don't forget to take your vitamins, okay? The weather hasn't been great lately." I answered briefly with a smile. My heart felt warm because I felt cared for. Even though it was short, I always looked forward to conversations like this. "All right, Dad, we have to head out now. We have a dinner engagement with Jeffrey's clients." Citra said goodbye. "Be careful on the road." Citra nodded and hit the button to end the call, or at least she thought she did. I was about to put the phone down when the faint voices of Citra and Jeffrey came through again. Strange, the phone screen had already gone black. I thought there might have been a technical glitch. I narrowed my eyes and brought the phone closer to my ear. Their voices became clearer. "We need the funds for the 2.3 billion down payment on the Malong View house. Dad's house selling for big money is the fastest solution." Citra's voice sounded enthusiastic. My blood instantly froze. What did I just hear? "Just have him sign the property power of attorney first," Citra continued. "Don't give him the details. Just say it's for the notary's office. If we keep delaying it, Dad will get more senile. The paper might not be valid anymore," Citra added, in a tone I had never heard before, so cold and calculated. Jeffrey was heard chuckling slightly, saying, "After the house sells, we'll put Dad in the Mawar nursing home. They have nurses there, you know." My body instantly went limp, my hands trembled violently. The phone nearly slipped from my grasp. This couldn't be happening. My own daughter. I replayed the sound in my memory. Twice, 3 times. I hadn't misheard. All the memories of my sacrifices for her swirled in my head. School fees I covered by depleting my retirement savings. The luxurious wedding I paid for by selling a piece of inherited land. Even when Jeffrey was laid off, I supported them for months. There wasn't a single word of thanks in that recorded voice. Only cold calculation. How easily they planned to discard me. I didn't cry, nor did I get angry. The world seemed to stop spinning. I stared at the house wall that Citra's small hands had once drawn on. And suddenly, this house felt so strange. It was no longer a home, just an old building whose selling price was more valuable than my existence. That night, I turned on the kitchen light and sat in the rattan chair, staring blankly at the wall calendar. It was the 17th, Rini's birthday. 2 days away. I opened an old photo album I kept in the desk drawer. There was Citra in her kebaya dress at her graduation, and I was holding her hand with such pride. On the back of the photo, it was written, "To Dad, my source of strength." Now, those words felt like a sneering insult that pierced me to the bone. Citra, the one I raised with all my love and sacrifice, was now easily planning to get rid of me. On the phone screen, the video call had finally truly disconnected. But the wound in my heart was too deep to be erased. And I knew that tomorrow morning, I wouldn't be the same person. Someone whose feelings have been killed is no longer afraid of anything. They think I'm old and forgetful, but I still keep everything, from the last receipt for her tuition to the car loan installment receipts they don't even know I paid off. The awakening. I woke up earlier than usual this morning. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, still shy behind the thin Cicerua fog. I barely slept, I just lay there with my eyes open, contemplating the voices still echoing in my ears. With shuffling steps, I headed to the old cabinet near Rini's bookshelf. A teak wood cabinet that I always cleaned every Friday morning. It's where I've kept all my important documents for decades. I opened the bottom drawer, pulling out 2 brown files yellowed with age. Files I only opened when absolutely necessary. Let's see what they forgot, I muttered softly. I opened the first file. It contained the receipts for Citra's tuition at Pajajaran University, Rp. 88,700,000 for 8 semesters. Money I collected by installment over 6 years. I kept every sheet neatly. There were even still folds and my signature on every transfer receipt. The second file was thicker. It held the payment proofs for Citra and Jeffrey's wedding reception, Rp. 112 million, including decoration, catering, and the hotel. A number that drained almost all of my retirement savings. But I was happy to do it then. My only daughter's wedding had to be perfect. That's what I told Rini back then. I also found a transfer slip to the car dealership for Rp. 21,600,000 to pay off Jeffrey's car installment. I vividly remember them coming to me with pleading faces. "We're in trouble, Dad. If the car gets repossessed, Jeffrey will have trouble getting to the office." And without thinking twice, I gave them the savings I had put aside for a long-planned bathroom renovation. All these proofs of sacrifice were neatly stored, never to be brought up. Because, in my mind, that was a father's duty, to give without expecting anything in return. But now, all those papers felt like proof of my own foolishness. I recalled those difficult times. Back then, I worked 2 shifts as a project engineer and a small construction consultant. Waking up before dawn, coming home when all the neighbors' lights were out. My body was tired, but Citra's smile when she received her tuition money was always the best medicine. Once, I fell down the stairs at a project due to being too exhausted, having stayed up late to finish extra construction drawings to get a bonus to pay Citra's tuition, which was 2 weeks overdue. My knee was cut and bleeding, but I still finished the work. I never told anyone, not even Rini. Rini herself made no less sacrifice. She once patched my work uniform with leftover thread so my salary could be used entirely to buy Citra new shoes for her thesis defense. "Your shirt is still fine, dear, just a small tear in the elbow," she said, smiling, even though her eyes couldn't hide her fatigue. We once ate spinach and tempeh for an entire month, breakfast, lunch, dinner, the same menu, all to set aside savings for her college fees. Rini even fainted once from anemia, but she still said, "It's okay, as long as Citra can get her degree." All that sacrifice now felt meaningless. Especially when I remember what happened after Jeffrey lost his job. It was about 2 years ago. Jeffrey was laid off due to involvement in a consumer property fraud case. I never knew the details. They didn't want to talk much about it. What was clear was that Citra and Jeffrey were forced to move back into this house, temporarily. The temporary lasted 16 months. During that time, all the bills remained under my name. Electricity, water, internet, even the maintenance fee for the air conditioner they installed in their room without my permission. Citra often shopped online using this house's address. She even casually referred to our Cicerua house when talking to her friends on the phone. The most hurtful thing was that I was told to sleep in the small back room. So the young couple has room to move freely, Jeffrey said with a joking tone that I disliked. But I tolerated everything. For peace, for Citra, for the memory of Rini's dying wish, take care of Citra, no matter what happens. I grabbed my phone and reopened the recording of last night's call. I played it again at low volume just to make sure I hadn't been dreaming. The voices were just as painful. The plan to sell me off, get rid of me, to consider me just a burden to be managed. They had made their decision. Now it was my turn. I took a small notebook from the desk drawer. With a trembling hand, I wrote a single sentence. Not out of fear, but out of contained anger. And anger is cold and calm as a deep lake. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Today is the 16th. Tomorrow is Rini's birthday. Usually, Citra would send flowers or a cake, then call briefly to offer a prayer for her mother. I wondered, would she call tomorrow? Would she be planning her next step to eliminate her father behind a prayer for her mother? The secret in the safe. I put down the notebook and walked to the corner of the room. Hidden behind the wardrobe was a small metal safe I had installed 10 years ago. Not many people knew about its existence. Not even Citra. I entered the combination that had never changed, Rini's birthdate. The safe opened, and inside were the most valuable documents. The original certificate of the house, in my name, Roy Suryanto. A certificate of ownership that I had never shared with anyone, not even Citra. Not because I didn't trust her, but because Rini once advised me, this house is your security in old age, Roy. Whatever happens, hold onto it tightly. Now, I understood what she meant. No power of attorney, no dispute, no witnesses. This house belonged only to me. And if Citra and Jeffrey thought they could easily take it from me, they were gravely mistaken. My brain slowly began to work. Planning, arranging, thinking step by step. I might be old, but I'm not stupid. I might be lonely, but I'm not weak. I might be in pain, but I'm not helpless. I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out a worn business card. The card of Haji Fikri, an old notary who had helped Rini manage the deed for her inherited land. An honest man with a white beard and sharp eyes who could read a lie. Tomorrow, I whispered to myself, I will visit you, Pak Haji. The morning sun began to climb higher. Its light streamed through the bedroom window. I stood up, taking the walking stick that had been my support for a week. The pain in my knee was still there. But for some reason, my body felt lighter this morning. Perhaps the burden on my heart had begun to lift, replaced by a new, stronger determination. I looked at Rini's photo on the wall, her calm face, her perpetually soothing smile. Rini, I whispered softly. Forgive me, I have to do this, but you would understand. I picked up the house certificate again, gently rubbed it, and put it back into the safe. I locked it tight, turning the combination to the last number. I grabbed my phone, pressed the contacts button, and searched for a name I hadn't called in a long time. Agus Santoso, an old property agent I had once helped when he almost defaulted on a client's lot contract. He owed me a favor. And now was the time to ask for his help. While waiting for the dial tone, I looked at every corner of this house. The house that had been a silent witness to my entire life journey. The house I thought would be where I would grow old peacefully and die in comfort. But now, this house would be the starting point of a new game. A game they started, but one I would finish in my own way. Hello, Pak Roy. Wow, it's been a long time since I last heard from you. What's the reason for the early call? Agus's voice on the other end sounded cheerful and energetic. I smiled faintly, cleared my throat before answering, Agus, son, I need your help. It's about my house. And on that day, I began to plan my silent, but sharp, retribution. The revenge of a father who wouldn't yell, but one that would be deeply felt. For the daughter who forgot sacrifice. For the son-in-law who calculated the selling price of affection. For those who too quickly considered an elderly parent a burden. They had decided my fate. Now it was my turn to decide theirs. They thought I couldn't tell the difference between a gas station and a notary's office. But while they were busy showing off their dream new house, I was sitting in front of a property lawyer, formulating a slow, legal, and deadly counterattack. Part 2, The Legal Gambit and the Market Test. 3 days passed since I heard that conversation I shouldn't have. 3 days filled with quiet, behind-the-scenes activity that I never imagined I'd undertake in my twilight years. 3 days that transformed a loving father into an unexpected adversary. This morning, after injecting the pain reliever into my own knee, a skill I'd learned over the last 2 years, I prepared for an important trip. I put on the dark blue batik shirt Rini gave me for my 50th birthday, black dress pants, and a pair of loafers I hadn't worn in a long time. I neatly trimmed my thin beard and mustache and dabbed on a little cologne. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the Roy Suryanto of old, upright, confident, and authoritative. Today is not the day to look weak, I muttered to my reflection. After making sure the house certificate and other crucial documents were secure in a brown leather folder, I ordered a ride share. It wasn't my habit, I usually preferred the public van, but today was different. Today, I didn't want to be bothered by trivial things. Half an hour later, I was standing in front of Haji Fikri's law office in the Luiyang area. It was a 2-story building with yellowing white paint and a simple, unpretentious sign. Humble, yet professional, just like its owner. Assalamu alaikum, Pak Haji, I greeted as I entered the waiting room. A young receptionist smiled kindly and asked me to sit down. Pak Haji is finishing up a file. He'll see you shortly, she explained. I nodded, settling onto the cool leather sofa in the air-conditioned room. The walls were decorated with Arabic calligraphy and several framed diplomas. A faint scent of cinnamon from the air freshener reminded me of my childhood home. Roy Suryanto, Masha Allah, how many years has it been since we last met? The familiar, deep voice made me turn around. Haji Fikri stood in the doorway of his office, still with the now longer white beard, round glasses, and a black skullcap. He must be nearly 70, but his eyes were sharp, and his steps were steady. We shook hands and shared a brief hug. Then, he led me into his office, which smelled of old wood. It was an air-conditioned room with full bookshelves and a sturdy-looking teakwood desk. "How is Bu Rini?" he asked, offering me a cup of warm tea. "She passed away 5 years ago, Pak Haji," I replied softly. His face turned somber. "Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun. I am truly sorry for your loss, Pak Roy. Bu Rini was an extraordinary woman. I still remember when she handled the land deed, so meticulous and patient." I nodded, smiling faintly, remembering my wife. "It is precisely because of Bu Rini's advice that I'm here, Pak Haji." I told him everything calmly. About the house I built myself, about Sidra and Jeffrey's plan I'd accidentally overheard, about their intention to put me in a nursing home. Haji Fikri listened attentively, occasionally nodding or frowning. "I want to ensure the full legality of the house," I concluded, handing over the house certificate. "I want to know if I can sell the house without the family's power of attorney." Haji Fikri examined the document carefully, opening page after page, checking the stamps and signatures. Then, he looked up at me with his wise eyes. "This certificate is a SHM, Certificate of Property Rights, in your name, Pak. There is no open grant or inheritance attached. Full ownership rights. Even a biological child cannot claim it without proof of delegation," he explained clearly. A surge of relief washed over me. "So, I can sell it without my daughter's approval?" Haji Fikri nodded. "Legally, you are the rightful owner, fully entitled to this property." "But," he paused. "But what, Pak Haji? But are you sure this is the best path? Family conflicts can be very painful and leave scars that—" I paused for a moment. Images of Sitra as a child, her cheerful laughter, her warm hugs, flashed through my mind. They were quickly replaced by her cold voice planning to get rid of me. "I never wanted to hurt my daughter, Pak Haji, but they chose to hurt me first," I answered firmly. "This is not about revenge, it's about dignity." Haji Fikri nodded in understanding. "In that case, I will assist you with the legal process. But remember, Pak Roy, the door to forgiveness is always open. Whenever you're ready." After handling some initial paperwork, I excused myself. My steps felt lighter as I left the office. A new conviction bolstered me. I was still in control of my own life. The property agent. The next step was already waiting. I contacted Agus Santoso, the property agent who had promised to meet me today. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop on the outskirts of the city. Agus arrived right on time, still dressed in a neat suit with the friendly smile I remembered. But this time, there was surprise in his eyes when he saw me. "Pak Roy, how have you been? Last time we met, I felt like you were more." He stopped, perhaps not wanting to offend. More robust, more healthy. Yes, a lot has changed in 2 years, son, I finished casually. We ordered coffee and immediately got down to business. I explained my intention to sell the house, of course without revealing the real reason. Agus listened intently, occasionally jotting notes in his small book. May I survey the house first, Pak? We headed to my house in Cicerua. During the drive, Agus talked about the property market trends, noting that the Cicerua area was increasingly attracting investors looking for villas and small resorts because of the cool air. Upon arrival, Agus walked through every corner, observing the still glossy teak floor, the clean and spacious kitchen, the well-maintained yard, and the stunning hill view. He occasionally clicked his tongue in admiration and took pictures of certain parts. Pak, this house could easily go for over 1.3 billion rupiah if we target investors looking for a cool climate location for a private villa, he said, his eyes sparkling. That figure surprised me. It was far beyond my initial estimate. Rini would have been proud to see the house we built with such effort now valued so highly. But it's not the money I'm after. I want this house sold in 10 days, but with no questions asked, no family strings attached, I stated flatly. Agus looked surprised, but his professionalism quickly took over. 10 days is extremely fast, Pak. But I do have a few potential investors who are actively hunting for property in this area. I'll do my absolute best. Thank you, son. I trust you. The swift sale. In the next 48 hours, Agus worked with extraordinary efficiency. He spread private listings through a dedicated investor network, avoiding public platforms. This strategy was perfect for my needs, fast and secret. The result exceeded expectations. An export businessman from Jakarta was interested, looking for a house to be a retreat for his elderly parents. Ironic, I thought. The house rejected by my own child would now be a place for someone else to cherish their parents. After a survey and a brief negotiation handled by Agus, we agreed on 1.365 billion rupiah. The process would be fast, without a bank loan. For the legal process, I deliberately did not use Haji Fikri. Not out of distrust, but to avoid suspicion if Citra or Jeffrey were to look for information. I chose Notary Budian in the city recommended by Agus, an efficient, professional woman in her 40s who didn't ask many questions. Within a week, the entire process was almost complete. The proceeds from the sale would be deposited directly into a new Sharia Amana bank account I had just opened in my own name. My plan was to separate the funds into 4 different accounts, each with 2-level PIN protection. No transactions would have Citra or Jeffrey's name on them, not a single rupiah. In the midst of all this, Citra sent a WhatsApp message as usual. This time, it was accompanied by a forwarded Insta story showing her and Jeffrey visiting the show unit of their new home in Malang View. Looks good, right, Dad? When it's finished, you have to come and visit. There's a little garden perfect for you to relax in. The message brought a bitter smile to my face. I imagined that little garden was just a formality. Just like her promise, we'll take care of this house together, which turned out to be a cover for their true plan. That night, as I sat in a coffee shop waiting for some notary documents to be completed, another message from Citra came in. Are you feeling well, Dad? We'll come to Cicerua next week. We want to talk about minor house renovations. My chest tightened. They were planning renovations even before they managed to acquire the house. I calmed myself and replied gently. Of course. I also have some news for you both then. I imagined Citra's face when she read my message. Maybe she thought I had a gift or some savings I wanted to hand over. Maybe she thought I was going to discuss moving somewhere more comfortable, just as they planned, which she didn't know. In my wallet, I kept a copy of the nearly finalized deed of sale for the house. Not to flaunt, not to show off, but to keep safely until the right moment. The moment when everything had to be laid bare before their faces. I looked up at the Cicerua night sky, dotted with stars, taking a deep breath of the cool air that I might not feel again after all this was done. Sadness, yes, but also a strange sense of relief, like someone finally letting go of a burden carried for too long. The game has just begun, I whispered to myself. And they have no idea their opponent is still sharp. Part 3, the silent exit and the setup. I didn't burn this house down, I cleaned it. I swept every corner. I folded Rini's clothes one by one. But every movement of my hands was part of a war they couldn't see. The sale of the house went faster than I had imagined. It only took 7 days, not the 10 I had requested. Thanks to Agus and his network, everything was concluded without a hitch. All the documents were signed, the money was transferred to my account, and the spare key was handed over to the new owner, with the agreement that they would only occupy the house 2 weeks later. 2 weeks was enough time for me to finalize everything. This morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Before the sun rose, I was sitting on the porch, staring at the front yard I always swept every morning. A thin fog still shrouded the trees, giving a mystical impression to the house that had been the silent witness to my life for 30 years. "Today is the last day you'll greet me, old house," I whispered softly. I started tidying the house alone. I didn't hire movers or laborers. This was personal business, too personal to involve others. I decided to take only a few essential items: the family photo album, Rini's prayer clothes and mat, her old, cherished cookbook, one suitcase of my personal clothing, and the book of Tafsir interpretation gifted by my late father. The rest of our memories, the dining table where we shared stories, the old sofa that witnessed Citra's childhood laughter, the bed where Rini took her last breath, I left everything behind. Not because they were worthless, but because they were too precious to drag to a new place. Let them remain here, frozen in time, untouched by the disappointment I now felt. "The most valuable thing is memory, and I carry that inside here," I muttered, pointing to my chest. I swept the floors one by one, wiped the window panes until they gleamed, and polished the slightly rusted doorknob of Citra's bedroom, as if preparing the house for an honored guest. Yet, I knew this was a ritual of farewell. The letter and the cameras. In between cleaning, I contacted a trusted locksmith, a middle-aged man named Pak Utsman who lived nearby. I asked him to come late that evening to replace all the door locks, the gate padlock, and the window latches. He didn't ask many questions, just nodded in understanding. Perhaps he thought it was just a regular precaution from an elderly man worried about security. What he didn't know was that I was also installing several mini spy cameras. One, shaped like a charger, was near the living room outlet. It was connected to an app on my phone and could record both audio and video for 24 hours. Another camera I concealed in the dining room chandelier. I'm no tech expert, but the installation instructions I bought online were simple enough to follow. During a brief rest around noon, I sat at my small desk. With the pen I had used for years, I calmly wrote a handwritten letter. The sentences were short, to the point, but enough to stab deep. "Citra and Jeffrey, this house is no longer ours. You once said your father was a burden. Well, your father has left, taking that burden with him. Your belongings are stored at Siner Jaya warehouse. Retrieval deadline is 27 days. The money from the sale is not yours. Your father." I folded the letter into a white envelope and slipped it behind the main door, the first place they would look when entering the house. I placed it neatly, not concealed, but also not too obvious. Just like my pain all these years, present but never shown. My relocation preparations were complete. I had booked a simple senior apartment unit in East Lembong. It's a quiet place with mountain views, complete with a small prayer room and a mini library. It's not luxurious, but more than enough for an old widower who just needs peace. All my important data was transferred to a flash drive. My browser history was deleted. All digital footprints were wiped clean. I may not be a tech wizard, but I am meticulous about things like this. No one was supposed to know where I went, unless they truly made an effort to find me, which I doubted they would. Final moments. That afternoon, I removed the family photos from the walls one by one. The photo of Citra at her graduation, the picture of our small family at the beach, the photo of Citra and Jeffrey's wedding that once made my chest swell with pride. I put them all into a box, except for one, my wedding photo with Rini. I left that photo hanging in the living room, facing the front door. Let it be the first thing they see, besides the letter. By sunset, I had finished all the preparations. My small suitcase was ready by the door. The rideshare I had booked would arrive in 30 minutes. I stood on the porch, looking out at the yard one last time. The rambutan tree Citra and I planted was now tall and bearing heavy fruit. Rini's favorite ornamental plants were still blooming beautifully, carefully tended by my aging hands. "Goodbye, old house. Thank you for being a good home for us," I whispered softly. I stepped out and stood at the gate. I turned back to face the house, then whispered again, this time more for myself. Rini, this house has finished sheltering us. Now it's time to shelter a worthy retaliation. After closing and locking the gate with the new padlock, I put the key in my pocket and walked slowly towards the main road, where the taxi would pick me up. My legs still ached, but somehow my steps felt light, as if a burden of decades had been lifted from my shoulders. Inside the car, I put on my earphones and opened the camera monitoring app I had just installed. Everything worked well. The living room was clear, and so was the dining room. I deliberately set the porch light to turn off automatically at 9 p.m., but the interior lights remained on. A small signal that a new war had begun. The trip to the senior apartment in Lembang took about an hour. During the ride, I remained silent, gazing out the window, watching the scenery change from dense housing to a quiet road lined with trees. The driver didn't talk much, perhaps sensing I was lost in my own thoughts. Upon arriving at the senior apartment complex, a friendly attendant greeted me. A young woman with a warm smile that reminded me of Citra when she was a teenager. She helped me take my suitcase to the unit I had reserved, a simple room on the second floor with a balcony overlooking the valley. Pak Roy, here are the keys. If anything happens, you can press the help button near the bed. The attendant is available 24 hours, she explained. I nodded my thanks, then asked her to leave me alone. As soon as the door closed, I sat down on the edge of the bed, looking at the room that would be my new home. Simple but clean. A single bed, a small cabinet, a desk and chair, and an ensuite bathroom. There was also a mini kitchen with an electric stove and a small refrigerator. So, this is where I will spend the rest of my life, I murmured softly. I took Rini's photo out of my bag and placed it on the bedside table. At least in this strange place, there was a familiar face to keep me company. The night grew late, but I couldn't sleep. My mind drifted to Citra and Jeffrey. What would they do when they found the house empty? How would they react to reading my letter? Would they regret it, or would they become angrier? I opened the monitoring app on my phone one last time. The house was still empty, the porch light was off as I had set. From the outside, the house looked like it had been abandoned for a long time. But the camera kept recording, waiting for the moment they arrived. This is not revenge, I whispered to myself. This is a lesson, a valuable lesson that I'm late in giving. I lay my body down on the still unfamiliar bed. The sound of crickets and the Lembang night wind was faintly audible from behind the window. Everything felt so different from my old house. But perhaps that's what I needed now. Something new, something untainted by betrayal. Good night, Rini, I whispered, looking at my wife's photo. Pray that I am strong enough to face the days ahead. And that night, for the first time since hearing Citra and Jeffrey's conversation, I fell asleep peacefully. Whether it was exhaustion or finally taking control of my own life, I didn't know. But the camera in the old house kept recording, and that night, the self-extinguished porch light was a signal that a new war had just ignited. The setup is complete. Their Innova car stops smoothly in front of the gate. Citra casually pulls out the key, smiling and saying, "Dad must be napping." But the only thing awake is the small camera that has been monitoring them for 3 days. Part 4. The confrontation in the video feed. It's been 5 days since I moved into this senior apartment. 5 days that felt like 5 years. My body might be in Lembang, but my mind often drifted back to the old house in Cisarua. Every morning, the first thing I did was check the monitoring app on my phone. So far, there had been no sign of Citra and Jeffrey. Until today, at 11 a.m., just as I finished participating in the morning exercise for seniors in the hall. My phone vibrated. A notification from the surveillance app, motion detected in the front area. With a pounding heart, I opened the application, and there they were. Citra and Jeffrey got out of a white Innova car parked right in front of the house gate. Citra wore a light blue blouse and white pants, while Jeffrey was in a checkered shirt and jeans. They carried a suitcase, shopping bags, and something else that made me frown, a small roll-up banner. I put on my earphones to listen to their conversation. "Dad must be napping," Citra said, casually pulling a key from her bag. Jeffrey nodded, opened the trunk, and took out several bags. "Let's surprise him. Look at the banner. Dad will definitely be happy." They unrolled the banner for a quick moment, and I could read the writing, "New home, new chapter." Thank you, Dad. My chest tightened reading it. How ironic. Inside the car, just before they walked to the gate, I could clearly hear their conversation thanks to the camera's sensitive microphone. So, we'll turn the back room into a walk-in closet, right? Citra asked enthusiastically. Then we'll tear down the front garden and build a nice koi pond. Jeffrey chuckled. Whatever you want, honey. This house will be ours soon anyway. Dad won't mind, really, Citra continued. He'll be living in a much more comfortable place, after all. Jeffrey agreed. If Dad complains, just say it's for his safe old age. Listening to their conversation, my hands trembled holding the phone. They hadn't even acquired the house, but they were already planning massive renovations, changing everything I had painstakingly built, and the way they spoke about me, as if I were just a minor obstacle easily cleared away. The shock. Citra took out her key and tried to open the gate padlock. The key didn't fit. She tried repeatedly, twisting and turning it, but failed. Lo, why won't it open? She muttered, confused. Jeffrey took over, trying to insert the key. Maybe it's the wrong key. Citra shook her head. No way. This is the usual key. Dad must have changed the lock and forgotten. They rang the doorbell, but there was no sound. Citra pulled out her phone and tried to call me. My old number, of course, had been inactive for 3 days. I had bought a new SIM card. It's not active, she complained. Maybe Dad is at the mosque. Jeffrey began to look impatient. He walked around the gate, searching for a gap or a way to get in. Citra, try the kitchen window. You can usually get in through there, right? Citra nodded and walked to the side of the house. I switched to the other camera to follow their movements. Jeffrey swiftly climbed over the side gate, while Citra tried to open the kitchen window, which was indeed always a little loose. They succeeded in getting inside. My heart raced watching them enter the house that was no longer mine. They were the intruders now, not the guests, let alone the owners. As soon as they entered, they found the house dark. The curtains were closed, and there was no sound. Jeffrey turned on the living room lamp. Their faces were clearly visible on the main camera. Dad, Citra called out. Where are you, Dad? There was no answer. They began checking room after room, looking increasingly panicked. Then Citra saw it, the white envelope I had tucked behind the living room door, handwritten, to Citra and Jeffrey, from Dad. Jeff, look at this, Citra said, picking up the envelope. They looked at each other. Citra opened the envelope with trembling hands, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and read it slowly. Her expression changed drastically. Her eyes widened, her face went pale. No, it can't be, she whispered. Jeffrey snatched the letter and read it. His face turned red, his jaw clenched. This house is no longer ours. You once said your father was a burden. Well, your father has left, taking that burden with him. Your belongings are stored at Siner Jaya warehouse. Retrieval deadline is 27 days. The money from the sale is not yours. Your father. Citra fell onto the sofa. Her face was ashen. This is impossible. Dad would never sell this house. This is Mom's memory. Jeffrey furiously crumpled the letter. You told me to get that power of attorney. Now you're panicking. I never thought Dad would be like this, Citra sobbed. You thought Dad was stupid. Jeffrey snapped, throwing the letter onto the floor. He turned out to be slicker than us. I watched all this from my phone screen in the quiet senior apartment room. There was no sense of satisfaction, no joy in seeing my own daughter so broken. There was only emptiness and perhaps a tiny bit of relief that, at the very least, I was no longer a puppet in their plans. The reality. Check. Jeffrey pulled out his phone, roughly dialing a number. I'm calling Rudy, the notary. Let's check the legal status of this house. Minutes passed in tense silence. Jeffrey paced the living room while Citra sat frozen on the sofa. Jeff, the voice on the other end of the phone finally said, the house has legally changed hands. The deed of sale is valid, and the payment is complete. The new owner is PT Graha Sri Sentosa. They will start renovation in 2 weeks. Jeffrey cursed loudly, while Citra began to weep again. It's impossible. Citra couldn't finish her sentence. You have to get out of there, the voice on the phone continued. Legally, you have no rights to that property anymore. After hanging up, Jeffrey and Citra got into a fierce argument, blaming each other, dredging up the past, throwing accusations. Everything was clearly recorded by the camera I had installed. This was all your idea. Jeffrey screamed. "You're the one who said Dad was senile and easily persuaded." Citra retorted just as loudly. The argument lasted for almost half an hour until Citra finally slumped onto the floor, hugging her knees, muttering softly, "Dad, how could you be so cruel?" From my apartment in Lembong, I watched all this with a blank expression. There was no victory in seeing my own child devastated like that. But I also felt no regret. All I felt was the certainty that my decision was right. I opened the small notebook beside my bed and wrote, "They didn't lose the house. They lost the only person who never demanded anything in return." Citra and Jeffrey finally left about an hour later. They gathered a few remaining personal items in the house, stuffing them into bags in a hurry. Before leaving, Citra looked at my wedding photo with Rini, which was still hanging on the living room wall. She reached out as if to take it but then stopped herself. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered to the photo. "I failed to take care of Dad." They left the house with bowed heads and slow steps. The white Innova drove slowly out of the yard, leaving tire tracks on the wet ground after a night of rain. I was about to turn off the monitoring app, feeling that everything was over. But then, about an hour after they left, my phone vibrated again. A new notification: suspicious movement detected in the back fence area. With a furrowed brow, I reopened the app, and on the screen, I saw him. Not a stranger, but Jeffrey, back alone. This time, he had a screwdriver in his hand and black gloves. My heart pounded. What was he planning? Jeffrey returned that night, not to apologize, but to break in and steal the deed of sale. And by the time he realized all his actions were being recorded, it was already too late. Part 5. The Silent Retaliation and the Peace Found. My eyes were glued to the phone screen, watching Jeffrey nimbly climb over the back fence of the house. Black gloves covered his hands. A screwdriver was tucked into his back pocket. His expression was different from what I saw just hours ago. No longer panicked or angry, but cold and calculated. "What are you planning, Jeffrey?" I murmured, adjusting the camera to follow his movement. With practiced skill, Jeffrey picked the lock on the back door using the screwdriver and something that looked like a thin wire. It was a forced entry technique clearly not belonging to an average person. In a matter of minutes, he was inside the house. He didn't turn on the lights, only using the small flashlight on his phone to illuminate his path. Jeffrey went straight to what used to be my small study, where I typically stored important documents. He yanked the drawers open roughly, pulling out all their contents, searching for something in a desperate hurry. Finding nothing, he moved on to the bookshelf, then to my bedroom. "Waste of time looking, Jeffrey," I whispered to the screen. "All the important documents are with me." Frustrated by his lack of success, Jeffrey finally shoved the wardrobe aside. He seemed surprised when he found the small metal safe behind it. His eyes lit up, as if he'd found a treasure. He hurriedly tried to open it, entering various number combinations that I could guess were important dates: my birthday, Rini's birthday, even Citra's birthdate. Of course, they all failed. The safe was empty now, but Jeffrey didn't know that. After nearly 20 minutes of trying, Jeffrey looked increasingly frustrated. He kicked the safe, then turned to rummaging through the books on the shelf. He found my small notebook that I had deliberately left behind, a book containing only shopping lists and a few recipes. That's when he seemed to realize something. Jeffrey lifted his head, glancing around the room suspiciously. His gaze stopped at the charger plugged into the outlet, the first camera I installed. "Shit," he cursed, moving towards the charger. In an instant, my phone screen went dark. Jeffrey had found and destroyed one camera. But he didn't know there were two others still hidden. I switched to the camera in the chandelier. Jeffrey was still in the room, looking panicked now. He paced back and forth, occasionally running his hands through his hair. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled out his phone and called someone. "Hello, honey. I've searched everywhere. The deed of sale isn't here. It's gone. But there were surveillance cameras in the house." He paused, listening to the voice on the other end, which was certainly Citra. "Yes, Dad planned all of this. He knew our plan from the start." Another pause. "I don't know, honey. I tried to open the safe behind the wardrobe, but I couldn't. The important documents must be in there." Hearing that conversation, I immediately contacted Haji Fikri. In a calm voice, I explained what was happening. I asked him to record the timeline for legal purposes if needed later. Haji Fikri agreed, reminding me that what Jeffrey was doing was a crime, theft and vandalism. Pak Roy, you don't need to worry. Legally, you are very strong, but do you want to report this to the police? Haji Fikri asked. I paused for a moment, staring at the screen where Jeffrey still looked confused in my old house. Should I report him to the police? Get him arrested? Ruin Citra's future further? No, Pak Haji, I finally replied. I have my own way. Before ending his call, Jeffrey said words that stunned me. We have to find Dad, no matter what. We can't let that much money slip through our fingers. Not a sense of loss, not regret, just greed. It was then I knew my decision had been absolutely correct. Jeffrey finally left after nearly an hour of searching the house. Before exiting, he smashed one more camera he found in the living room. But he didn't know there was still one hidden camera in the dining room recording his every move. The final message. The next morning, I made a decision. I selected the clearest video clips showing Jeffrey forcibly breaking open the back door and ransacking the house. I also prepared scanned copies of the legal surrender of their belongings to the warehouse and the signed receipt. I sent all of this to Jeffrey's email with a short message. Thank you for showing me who you truly are. Don't worry, I won't leak this video as long as you don't try to take what is no longer yours. I wasn't threatening him, I was just stating the fact that I saw everything and still had a way to protect myself if necessary. A response came a few hours later, not from Jeffrey, but from Citra. A long message on my new WhatsApp number. I don't know how she got it. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. This was all Jeffrey's idea. He was the one who said you were too old to manage such a big house. I just wanted you to live comfortably in a place with a nurse. I know you're lonely since Mom left. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But please, don't cut off your own daughter. I'm just so tired, Dad. Tired of work, of Jeffrey always having these schemes. I wasn't thinking straight. Please forgive me, Dad. Tell me where you are now, we can talk about everything again. I read the message several times, looking for sincerity behind her words. But all I found were justifications and attempts to blame others, Jeffrey, circumstances, fatigue. There was no real admission of fault. I replied with one sentence, your father is not angry. He is merely done. Then I turned off my phone. It was time to truly move forward, starting a new, peaceful life in Lembang. Peace and a final gesture. The following days were filled with a new, calming rhythm. In the mornings, I went to the mosque for religious study with other seniors, sometimes helping the apartment library staff sort donation books. My body, once heavy with the weight of worry, now felt lighter. My knees and back still ached, but somehow it was more bearable. I started fasting on Mondays and Thursdays, a habit I had always wanted to adopt but never realized due to busyness. Occasionally, I wrote letters to Rini, pouring out my heart, recounting the journey of life I never thought I would take. I kept those letters neatly in a drawer, like a diary no one else would ever open. Each month, I set aside a portion of the house sale funds to donate to an orphanage near the apartment complex, in Rini's name. Usually, it was books, stationery, sometimes food for breaking the fast during Ramadan. This was my way of honoring my wife's memory while giving meaning to the money I received. There was no more news from Citra or Jeffrey. Perhaps they had given up, or maybe they finally realized I was serious about my decision. I didn't respond with curses. I didn't forcibly evict them. I simply gave them back what they had prepared for me, a strange place without love. One afternoon, sitting on the apartment balcony, enjoying the view of the valley enveloped in thin fog, I looked up at the sky. Clouds drifted slowly, the sun was beginning to set. That's when I whispered, Rini, I didn't win, but I didn't lose either. And somehow, I felt Rini heard me, smiling from afar. 2 months passed since the incident, life at the senior apartment became a pleasant routine. I even made some new friends. Pak Hassan, a former math teacher, Bu Endong, who still diligently cooked for all the residents on Sundays, and Pak Darmo, who loved to play chess and always invited me to a match. One morning, an apartment attendant knocked on my door. She carried a white envelope with no sender name. Pak Roy, something was delivered for you, she said kindly. I took the envelope, a crease forming on my forehead. No one knew my address here except Haji Fikri and the apartment owner. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. A photo of my old house in Cicerua. But it wasn't the house I knew. The house was now leveled to the ground, leaving only the foundation and a few remaining pillars standing. On the back of the photo was small handwriting. "Sorry, we just needed to start from scratch. But we will never forget that house." There was no signature, but I knew who the sender was, Citra and Jeffrey. I didn't know the real meaning behind the photo and the message. Was it a genuine apology, or a subtle way of showing they could still find my whereabouts? Or perhaps, in their strange way, it was an attempt to show that they, too, had let go of the house. I smiled faintly, then threw the letter into the trash bin. Whatever the intention, I was done. My old phase of life had ended. What remained now were the quiet days, spent in the peace I had finally found. That night, I sat on my bed, opening the old photo album. There was a photo of Citra as a child, laughing joyfully on the swing I built in the backyard. There were also photos of her elementary, junior high, high school graduations, and her college commencement. A long journey full of memories. "Maybe one day," I whispered to the photos. "Maybe one day we will meet again. But not now. Not anytime soon." I closed the album, putting it back in the drawer. Tomorrow was a new day with a new routine, and the new peace I chose for myself. As I lay down to sleep, my phone rang. An unknown number. For a moment, I hesitated to answer. But then, for some reason, I decided to. "Hello?" I asked softly. "Assalamu alaikum, Pak Roy," a middle-aged woman's voice sounded on the other end. "Walaikum salam," I replied. "Excuse me, who is this?" "It's Bu Ida, your old neighbor in Cicerua. Sorry to bother you this late." I paused, surprised. "Oh, Bu Ida. What is it?" "I just wanted to let you know," she said gently. "Your daughter, Mbak Citra, often comes here. She sits for hours in front of the former site of your house, which has now been torn down. Sometimes she just cries by herself. I feel so sorry for her." I didn't answer, just listened. "Pak Roy," Bu Ida continued. "I don't know what issues happened between you and your daughter. But as a parent myself, I just want to say that sometimes we need to give a second chance, not for them, but for our own hearts." Bu Ida's words echoed in my ears. Even after the call ended, I let my phone lie beside my pillow, my mind drifting aimlessly. "A second chance," I murmured softly. "But am I ready?" I looked at the ceiling of my empty apartment room. Maybe one day, I would try to answer that question. But not tonight. Tonight, I chose to sleep peacefully, free from the burden of the past. And when sleep finally overtook me, I dreamed of Rini. She was smiling, holding my hand, and whispering, "Share the peace you have found, Roy."